About 2 years ago, a couple came in to talk to me. For the sake of the story, we're going to call them Mark and Linda. They both were 68. They had $3.6 million saved across a 401k, a Roth, and a taxable brokerage account. They retired comfortably, they were smart people, and they had done almost everything right for the last 30 years. Their federal tax in retirement was about 22%. They knew it, they had accepted it, their previous advisor had told them it was unavoidable at their income level. 18 months later, Mark passed away. Linda came back in. Same accounts, same required distributions, same investment income. The only thing that changed was her filing status. Her tax rate jumped overnight on nearly identical income because the tax code treats a surviving spouse as a single filer, and the brackets for single filers are roughly half the width of married filing jointly. She had not planned for this. Mark had not planned for this. Their advisor definitely did not plan for this. I'm Ryan Knoll, founder of NavWealth, a firm that helps clients tax efficiently manage their retirement. Today, I'm going to show you the 2 tax traps that most $2 million to $5 million retirees walk into using Mark and Linda's actual numbers. And then I'm going to rewind their timeline and show you exactly what they should have done differently and when to avoid both those traps entirely. Let's start with where Mark and Linda were before anything went wrong, because this is where most $2 to $5 million retirees are right now, and most of them don't realize there's a problem. Mark and Linda's income in retirement came from 3 sources. These are the same 3 sources that drive income for almost every retiree in this asset range. Source 1 is required minimum distributions. Their 401k and IRA balance was about $3.4 million. At 73, that produces a first-year RMD of roughly $129,000. That number doesn't stay flat. It grows every year because the IRS percentage increases annually, and the account continues to compound on whatever balance is left. Source 2, Social Security. Mark was collecting about $38,000 a year. Linda was collecting about $24,000. Combined, that was $62,000, but not all of that is taxable. At their income level, 85% of their Social Security was subject to federal tax. That's about $52,700 in taxable Social Security income. Source 3, their taxable brokerage account. Dividends, interest, capital gains distributions, we'll call it $28,000 a year. This runs whether they sell anything or not. The total of those 3 sources was $209,700 before they spend a single discretionary dollar, before they take a vacation, before they write a check to a grandchild. Just the automatic structural income their accounts produce. Their 12% bracket ceiling for married filing jointly is $100,800. They blew past that on the RMDs alone. The 22% bracket runs up to $211,400. They get to take a standard deduction of roughly $35,000. So when you subtract that from all their income, their taxable income is roughly $175,000, which is squarely in that 22% bracket. Here's what makes this a trap and not just a bracket. None of these 3 income sources can be reduced after the fact. The RMD is mandatory. You can't skip it, reduce it, or defer it once you hit 73 or 75. And it grows every year. Social Security is locked once you claim. You cannot go back, unclaim, or reduce your benefit. And dividends and interest from the brokerage are generated automatically by the holdings. Sure, you could sell where possible, but you might trip more gains by doing so. The idea is all 3 are permanent. All 3 are growing or fixed. None of them respond to lifestyle changes. Together, they create a floor of taxable income that most $2 to $5 million retirees cannot get below, no matter what they do. That's the 22% trap. It's not a bracket someone falls into because they made a mistake. It's the structural outcome of saving $2 to $5 million in pre-tax accounts and not managing the distribution phase before it started. Mark and Linda were in it. They didn't love it, but they had accepted it. The real problem, though, was one of the 2 scenarios would play out, and each increase their taxes. The first problem happens organically. People take what they're supposed to. Capital gains and dividends trickle through from brokerage investments, and the accounts keep growing. Retirees also get older, and as accounts grow and retirees get older, the required distributions get bigger, increasing their income, pushing them into higher tax brackets, and forcing larger Medicare premiums. Take Mark and Linda. If all they ever did was take their required distribution and their assets grew at a reasonable 6% annually, they would be pushed out of the 22% tax brackets within 5 years. And that also makes their Medicare premiums more expensive by about $100 a month each at that point. And if they continue to follow that pattern, they eventually hit the 32% bracket by their mid-80s. And their Medicare premiums are thousands of dollars a year more, all because they followed the plan the government made for them. And all that plan does is benefit the IRS. The first pitfall happens slowly over time. The second one is immediate and even more costly. Unfortunately for our couple, Mark passed away at 75. Here's what changed financially, and here's what didn't. What changed? Linda lost her $24,000 Social Security benefit, but kept Mark's higher $38,000 benefit. So her Social Security went from $62,000 combined down to $38,000. A drop, but not a dramatic one. What didn't change? The 401k. Linda just inherited Mark's portion. The RMDs continued, the same account with the same balance on the same schedule. The brokerage didn't change. The dividends and interest kept coming. So Linda's total taxable income dropped from about $175,000 to roughly $172,000 after deductions. So about the same exact income level. Now here's where the math gets ugly. When Mark and Linda filed jointly, the 22% bracket gave them $110,000 of room to operate. When Linda files as a single, that 22% bracket runs from $50,400 to $105,700. That's $55,000 of room. Linda's income dropped minimally. Her bracket width dropped by 50%. Her $172,000 of taxable income, which sat comfortably in the 22% bracket as a couple, now pushes her to the middle of the 24% bracket and well into the 32% bracket within the next 5 years. The difference is roughly $15,000 per year in additional federal taxes averaged over the rest of her life. On a 15-year retirement horizon for Linda, that's approximately $225,000. $225,000 in extra taxes from a filing status change that the tax code makes automatically and that nobody in their planning process had ever modeled. Linda found out in the first tax season after Mark passed. That is the wrong time to find out. If this math is new to you, this is what we cover every single week on this channel. Specific scenarios, specific numbers, specific strategies for the $2 to $5 million retirement range. Hit subscribe so you don't miss the next one. And if you and your spouse haven't modeled what your tax picture looks like on a single return, I built a free tool called the Retirement Readiness Scorecard. It's 10 questions long. One of them is specifically about the surviving spouse scenario. The link is in the description and it takes about 2 minutes to fill out. Now, here's where I want to rewind the tape on Mark and Linda's story because everything I just showed you was avoidable. Not with some exotic strategy, not with perfect market timing, but with a straightforward Roth conversion and investment plan that they could have started 5 years before any of this happened. Let's go back to when Mark and Linda were both 63. They're still working at this point. They have $2.4 million in 401ks and retirement's planned for age 65. At that point, both problems were already visible on the horizon. You could model exactly what the RMDs would look like, exactly what the bracket picture would look like on a joint return, and exactly what it would look like on a single return if one of them passed. The solution to both problems is the same. Reduce the pre-tax balance before RMDs begin and invest excess money into a brokerage account more tax efficiently. Every dollar you move from a traditional 401k to a Roth is a dollar that never generates an RMD and never pushes a surviving spouse into a higher bracket. And every dollar reduction in capital gains, interest, and dividends gives them more room to operate within their brackets. Here's what their plan could have looked like. While they're working, they start to build a more tax-efficient brokerage account. For simplicity, let's say they have $100,000 annually they can move into it at this point, and they started with roughly $250,000 in there. Before making any investments, they should look to see if they have any losses in the account to offset gains elsewhere. Start there. Next, make sure that if they hold bonds, they're municipal bonds which generate tax-free income. Finally, avoid dividend-paying stocks where possible. Then start adding the $100,000 a year over the next 2 years to a direct indexing strategy that automatically keeps gains low and filters out high dividend stocks. Redirect a percentage of the contribution to municipal bonds to keep the income from the portfolio lower. Let's assume these moves save them like $12,000 in income from their brokerage account annually in retirement. So income from their brokerage account now is down to $16,000 annually. It's not a huge amount, but it gives them more room to work with, and that's important. Now, Mark and Linda retire at 65. From 65 to 72, they have a 7-year window, which I call the conversion corridor. That's before required distributions begin at 73. During those years, their taxable income is lower because they're no longer earning wages. The 22% bracket has room in it. The 22% tax bracket goes to $211,000. They need $120,000 after tax to live on. That leaves them with about $126,000 of room after accounting for their deductions. We know that $16,000 of that is going to be used by dividends and capital gains. And let's assume they incur an additional $10,000 of capital gains to pay their taxes on the conversions for the year. They have $100,000 of room left at this point, which is what they're going to convert from their traditional accounts to their Roth accounts. Over 7 years, that's $700,000 moved from pre-tax to tax-free. Now, let's look at what that does to their numbers at age 73. And to keep things simple, all accounts are going to grow at 6% annually. The IRA is worth $1.5 million. Their first year RMD is about $57,000. The brokerage account is worth $500,000, and the Roth is now worth a little over $1 million. So instead of $3.6 million, mostly all in IRAs, they have nearly $3.1 million, half of which is not taxed or taxed at lower rates. Their income stack changes too. They have $57,000 in RMDs, plus $52,700 in taxable Social Security, plus the $16,000 investment income, which equals $90,200 of taxable income after their deductions. They not only have more than enough income coming in to meet their spending needs from all those sources, but they also have an additional $138,000 of money left in the 22% bracket to pay taxes and continue performing Roth conversions. There's less bracket pressure and less overflow risk. And here's the key. The $1 million sitting in the Roth is generating income that is completely invisible to the tax code. It doesn't show up on the return. It doesn't push them towards 24%. It just grows tax-free and comes out tax-free. That's how you loosen the 22% trap. You can't eliminate it entirely, but you can reduce the pressure and create flexibility. But the real payoff? The reason I'm spending time on this is what happens to the surviving spouse. In the world where Mark and Linda didn't do conversions, Linda ends up in the 24% bracket day one and paying $15,000 a year in extra federal taxes. Over 15 years, that's $225,000. In the world where they executed the conversion plan, here's what Linda's picture looks like after Mark passes. Her RMD is based on the $1.5 million balance, so it's still the same roughly $57,000 annually. Her Social Security is lower. It's $38,000. It's just the higher of the two benefits, which is about $32,300 taxable. Her investment income from brokerage is the same, $16,000. After accounting for her deductions, she has taxable income around $88,000. That puts her squarely in the 22% bracket, with $17,000 of room to spare to either meet her spending needs or perform more Roth conversions. She still pays more in tax than if Mark were alive, but she saves roughly $8,000 average annually over that same 15-year period compared to doing nothing. That's $120,000 more in her pocket. And the $1 million in the Roth, Linda still owns it tax-free. And if Linda doesn't need all of it, her children inherit the Roth balance income tax-free as well. Every dollar Mark and Linda converted at 22% on a joint return was a dollar that would have been taxed at a higher rate on Linda's single return. That is the math. It's not complicated, but it requires a conversation that most couples never have because it means sitting down together and talking about what happens when one of you isn't here anymore. Mark and Linda never had that conversation. By the time Linda came to see me, the conversion corridor was closed. Mark was gone. The married filing joint bracket rates, the wide brackets, the ones that make conversions so efficient, were no longer available to her. The widow's escalation is not rare. It's the default outcome for every married couple where one spouse passes before the tax picture has been restructured. But neither outcome is inevitable if you act while the window is open. The conversion corridor requires both spouses to be alive. It requires time before required distributions begin, and it requires knowing exactly how much room you have in your current bracket, how many years of conversions you can execute, and what the surviving spouse's single filer picture looks like on the other side. That's not a YouTube video's worth of math. That's your specific numbers, your specific accounts, and your specific Social Security benefits run through a model that shows you both timelines, with conversions and without. That's exactly what we do in our initial planning conversation. The link is in the description to get on my calendar. It's your numbers, your situation, and a clear picture of what both plans look like. Because the smartest thing you can do with $3 million is make sure every decision, including the ones you haven't made yet, counts. See you in the next video.